Barron Trump tried to go after Judge Franklin with bold words, but Judge Franklin's reply left the entire room stunned. With calm authority, he turned the tables, delivering a response so sharp that even Barron was left speechless. The audience couldn't believe what they had just witnessed. True courtroom. Power on display. Who do you think handled it better? Comment below.
As criticism mounts over President Trump's plan to deport naturalized citizens, a viral petition is turning the spotlight on the president's own family. Titled "Deport Melania, Her Parents, and Barron," it questions the First Lady's immigration path as well as Barron's birthright status. With nearly 3,000 signatures, the petition highlights concerns over President Donald Trump's order to reinterpret the 14th Amendment.
As criticism mounts over President Trump's reported plan to deport naturalized American citizens, an online petition is turning the spotlight inward on the first family itself. The petition, hosted on an online platform, is titled "Deport Melania, Her Parents, and Barron in the First Round of Deportations."
All right, so this weekend, the internet absolutely lost its mind. And I mean completely went off the rails. Because there's this story going around that a sitting judge, allegedly threatened Barron Trump, Donald Trump's youngest son, threatened him with jail time if he doesn't show up to testify. Now hold on, let me say that again, because are you kidding me? A judge supposedly telling an 18-year-old kid, the president's son, that he better show up to court or he's going to jail. Like, come on, this is wild, right? But before we go any further, real quick, let's be honest, you can't really trust mainstream media anymore. That's why we built Pump Politics, to bring you real stories, real context, and no corporate spin. If you want to stay ahead of the headlines, join our free newsletter. We'll send the news straight to your inbox every day. Just click the link in the description to join. And if you just want to support what we're doing, join us, be part of the community that actually cares about the truth. All right, let's get back to the video. So here's what happened. Judge Juan Merchan, you know, the guy presiding over the New York fraud trial against the Trump organization, he's been making headlines for months now. And this past week, social media just erupted. X, formerly Twitter, TikTok, YouTube, everywhere you look, people are talking about how Barron Trump might be forced to testify, and if he refuses, jail, contempt of court, the whole 9 yards. Now let me be clear about something. When I first saw this, I thought, no way, this can't be real. Because think about it, Barron Trump is 18. He's in college at NYU. He's not running the Trump organization. He's not signing checks. He's not making business decisions. He's literally just a college kid. So why would prosecutors even want him to testify? But then you start digging into this story and you realize, yeah, this is exactly the kind of thing that gets people fired up in 2025, because it's not really about whether Barron has any information. It's about optics. It's about putting pressure on the Trump family. It's about making a statement that, as the judge himself has said, no one is above the law. And look, I get it. The law is the law. But here's where this gets really messy. There's no official subpoena for Barron. Like, none. No court filing. No formal document saying Barron Trump must appear. But there are these viral posts, hundreds of thousands of views, claiming there's a sealed list of potential witnesses, and supposedly Barron's name is on it. Can you believe this? So now you've got half the country saying this is political persecution, that the judge is weaponizing the court system to go after Trump's family, that they're dragging an innocent kid into this mess just to hurt his father. And then you've got the other half saying, well, the Trumps have gotten away with stuff for decades. It's about time they face real consequences, even if that means putting family members on the stand. This is what I mean when I say this story is polarizing, because depending on which side you're on, you see this completely differently. And that's intentional. That's the whole point. Now, here's what we know for sure. Judge Merchan has been tough on Trump, like really tough. He's held Trump in contempt of court 10 times for violating gag orders during the trial. And he's publicly warned that jail time is on the table if Trump keeps breaking the rules. The BBC reported on October 16th that Merchan said Trump could face jail if violations continue. Courthouse News said the same thing on October 15th. So the judge isn't playing around. He's made it clear that he's willing to use every tool at his disposal to enforce order in his courtroom. And that includes the possibility of jail time. But here's the thing, and this is important. There's a huge difference between threatening Donald Trump with jail for contempt and threatening his 18-year-old son with jail for not testifying. One of those things is normal court procedure. The other, that's unprecedented. That's honestly kind of insane. And yet, that's the narrative that's spreading. That's what people are talking about. Whether it's true or not almost doesn't matter anymore because the idea is out there, the damage is done. Yahoo News did a fact check on October 14th, and they confirmed that Barron is still enrolled at NYU. So all those earlier rumors about him dropping out, false, totally made up. But even the fact checkers can't confirm whether Barron's actually on this supposed witness list, because if it's sealed, well, nobody knows except the prosecutors and the judge. So we're left with this situation where nobody knows what's really happening, but everyone has an opinion, and those opinions are shaping how people view this entire trial, how they view the justice system, how they view Trump, how they view everything. And that's why this matters. Because even if this Barron story turns out to be completely false, it's already doing its job. It's already reinforcing the narrative that Trump is being unfairly targeted, that the system is rigged, that they'll go after anyone, even his kids, to take him down. Or, if you're on the other side, it's reinforcing the idea that the Trumps finally have to face accountability, that nobody gets a free pass, not even the former president's son. You see what's happening here? This isn't just about one teenager potentially being called to testify. This is about something way bigger. This is about how stories, true or false, shape our entire political reality, about how a single rumor can dominate headlines for days, about how we've reached a point where verification doesn't matter as much as virality. And honestly, that should terrify you, because if we're at a place where unconfirmed social media posts can drive the national conversation, if we're at a place where millions of people believe something just because it fits their worldview, then we're in serious trouble. But let's dig deeper, because there's more to this story than just the Barron angle. There's a whole pattern here, a whole system at play. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. Okay, so let's actually talk about what's going on here. Because this story isn't just about Barron Trump. It's way bigger than that. And honestly, most people are missing the real point. See, the reason this rumor is spreading so fast, the reason it's getting millions of views and shares, is because it taps into something much deeper. It's not really about whether Barron testifies or not. It's about trust. Or, more accurately, the complete lack of trust that people have in the system right now. Think about it. Half the country believes that Trump is being persecuted by a weaponized justice system, that judges, prosecutors, the FBI, the DOJ, they're all working together to destroy him. And stories like this, they're like gasoline on that fire. Because if you already believe the system is corrupt, then yeah, of course they threaten to jail his son. Of course they drag Barron into this. Nothing's off limits when you're trying to take down your political enemies. And then you've got the other half of the country that thinks Trump has been getting away with crimes for decades, that he's manipulated the system, delayed trials, intimidated witnesses, violated court orders, and never faced real consequences. So to them, this isn't persecution, this is justice. Finally. And here's the crazy part. Both sides have evidence to support their view, like actual facts. Let me show you what I mean. Judge Juan Merchan, this is the guy everyone's talking about. He's been presiding over Trump's New York hush money trial. This is the case involving Stormy Daniels, the payments made during the 2016 election, the alleged falsification of business records. And Merchan has been, let's just say, very strict. He's held Trump in contempt 10 times. 10. That's not normal. That doesn't happen in most trials. And each time, it's been for violating the gag order. Trump keeps posting on social media about witnesses, about the jury, about people involved in the case. And Merchan keeps fining him $1,000 here, $1,000 there. But here's what he said that got everyone's attention. According to Courthouse News Service, back in April 2025, Merchan warned Trump that the next violation could result in a jail sanction if recommended. He literally said jail is on the table. Now, for a lot of people, this is proof that Merchan is serious, that he's not messing around, that Trump doesn't get special treatment just because he's a former president or even a current president, again, as of January 2025. But for Trump supporters, this is proof of bias. Because come on, threatening to jail a sitting president over social media posts? That's never happened before in American history. So either Trump is uniquely terrible at following rules, or the judge has it out for him. And this is where the Barron story gets traction. Because if you already believe Merchan is biased, if you already think this whole trial is a witch hunt, then yeah, threatening to subpoena Barron makes perfect sense. It fits the pattern. But here's what the media isn't really covering. And this is important. There's no evidence, none, that Barron Trump has ever been involved in Trump Organization business decisions. The guy was literally a teenager during most of Trump's presidency. He wasn't in business meetings. He wasn't signing contracts. He wasn't making financial decisions. He was going to school, playing sports, being a kid. So what could he possibly testify about? Well, this is where it gets interesting. Because prosecutors don't necessarily need Barron to testify about business stuff. They might want him to testify about conversations, family discussions, things he overheard. Maybe his dad said something at the dinner table. Maybe he was in the room when certain decisions were made. And see, this is the thing that makes people uncomfortable. Because if prosecutors can subpoena family members just to testify about casual conversations, where does it end? Can they subpoena your spouse, your parents, your kids, just because you might have mentioned something to them? This is why even people who don't like Trump are feeling uneasy about this, because it sets a precedent. It opens a door that maybe shouldn't be open. Now, Trump's other kids have testified before. Ivanka testified in the New York civil fraud trial. Don Jr. has been questioned multiple times. Eric Trump, same thing. So there's precedent for family members being called to the stand, but they were all adults who worked for the company. They had official roles. They signed documents. They were executives. Barron, he's got none of that. He's just a kid who happens to have the last name Trump. But let's talk about the viral post for a second, because this is where the story gets really murky. The claims about Barron being threatened with jail, they're all coming from social media, X posts, TikTok videos, YouTube commentary channels, and they're all referencing this supposed sealed witness list. Here's the problem. Nobody can verify if this list actually exists. The New York Times hasn't reported it. NPR hasn't reported it. AP News hasn't reported it. The only sources are random accounts on social media and YouTube channels with names like Trump News Network or Breaking MAGA Updates. So is it real? Or is it just rage bait designed to get clicks and views? Honestly, probably the latter. But here's the thing. Even if it's fake, it's working. People believe it. They're sharing it. They're getting angry about it. And that anger is real, even if the story isn't. And this is the media environment we live in now, where a rumor can spread faster than the truth, where fact checkers are always 3 steps behind, where by the time someone debunks a story, it's already been shared 1,000,000 times. Yahoo News tried to fact check some of this. On October 14th, they confirmed that rumors about Barron dropping out of NYU were false. He's still enrolled, still going to classes, but even they couldn't confirm or deny the witness list stuff, because if it's sealed, well, nobody knows. So we're stuck in this weird limbo where we don't know what's true, but we do know that people are choosing to believe whatever fits their worldview. And that's kind of terrifying, honestly, because think about what this means for the justice system. If half the country thinks every prosecution of Trump is political, then they'll never accept any verdict. Guilty, rigged, innocent, proof he was innocent all along. There's no outcome where everyone trusts the process. And if the other half thinks Trump deserves whatever happens to him, then they'll justify anything. Subpoenaing family members? Fine. Threatening jail? Good. Whatever it takes. This is what happens when trust collapses, when institutions lose credibility, when everyone's so locked into their side that facts don't even matter anymore. And look, I'm not saying Trump is innocent. I'm not saying he's guilty. What I'm saying is this whole situation is a mess. And stories like the Barron rumor, they're making it worse. They're pouring fuel on a fire that's already out of control. Let's talk about timing for a second, because the timing of this story is interesting. We're in October 2025. Trump has been back in office for almost 10 months, and these legal cases, they're still hanging over him. The New York case, the Georgia case, federal investigations, all of it. And every single week, there's a new headline, a new development, a new controversy, and each one reinforces the narrative, whichever narrative you already believe. If you think Trump is a victim, then every new story is proof of persecution. If you think he's a criminal, then every new story is proof of guilt. There's no middle ground anymore. No nuance, no gray area. Just 2 completely different versions of reality existing at the same time. And the Barron story is the perfect example of this, because it's emotional. It involves a kid. It involves family. It's not some abstract legal argument about business records or campaign finance laws. It's personal. It's visceral. It makes people feel something. And that's exactly why it went viral. Because in 2025, emotion beats facts every single time. A story that makes you angry, that makes you scared, that makes you feel like your side is under attack. That's the story that spreads. That's the story that gets shared. That's the story that shapes opinions. All right, so let's break this down. Let's cut through all the noise and figure out what's actually happening here. Because there's the story people are talking about, and then there's what's really going on underneath. Point 1. Judge Wanmer Chen is serious about enforcing courtroom rules. That's not a rumor. That's documented fact. He's held Trump in contempt 10 times. He's warned publicly that jail is possible for continued violations. The BBC, Courthouse News, multiple outlets have confirmed this. So when people say the judge is threatening Trump, yeah, he is, but not out of nowhere. It's because Trump keeps breaking the rules. Now, whether you think those rules are fair, that's a different question. But the idea that Merchant is some rogue judge making stuff up, Not accurate. He's following standard contempt procedures. The unusual part is that it's happening to a president, but the procedures themselves, normal. Point 2. There is no confirmed evidence that Barron Trump has been subpoenaed. None. No court filing. No official document. Just social media rumors and viral posts. And here's the thing. If prosecutors actually wanted to subpoena Barron, we'd know. Because subpoenas are public record. They have to be filed with the court. So the fact that nobody can produce an actual document, that tells you something. But, and this is important, just because there's no subpoena now doesn't mean there won't be one later. Prosecutors could still add witnesses. They could still decide Barron has relevant information. It's possible, just not confirmed. Point 3. The reason this story spreads so fast is because it confirms what people already believe. If you think Trump is being persecuted, this story makes sense. Of course they go after his son. If you think Trump deserves accountability, this story also makes sense. Of course his family should testify. So the story works for everyone. And that's why it went viral. It's the perfect narrative for our divided moment. Everyone can use it to prove their point. But here's what people are missing. The real issue isn't whether Barron testifies or not. The real issue is what happens to public trust when rumors like this spread. Because think about it. If half the country believes a judge threatened to jail an 18-year-old kid with no evidence, how do they ever trust that judge again? How do they trust any verdict that comes out of that courtroom? They don't. They can't. And that's exactly what's happening. Trust in institutions, courts, media, government is collapsing. And stories like this are accelerating that collapse. Whether the story is true or not almost doesn't matter because the damage is already done. Now let's talk about why this matters going forward. We're in 2025. Trump is back in office. He won the 2024 election against Kamala Harris. He was inaugurated in January. So we're not talking about some distant political figure anymore. We're talking about the sitting president. And he's still dealing with legal cases from his first term. This is unprecedented territory. We've never had a president facing criminal trials while in office. We've never had a situation where a sitting president is being held in contempt by a judge. We've never had any of this. So what happens next? Well, a few things. First, these trials are going to continue. The New York case, the Georgia case, the federal cases, they're all still moving forward, and every single one is going to be controversial. Every verdict, every ruling, every decision, it's all going to be seen through a political lens. Second, stories like the Barron rumor are going to keep popping up because they work, they get engagement, they fire people up. Whether they're true or not, they're effective. So expect more of them. Expect more headlines about family members. Expect more claims about prosecutorial overreach or finally holding the powerful accountable. Expect the cycle to continue. Third, and this is the big one, the country is going to get more divided, not less. Because when you have two completely different versions of reality, when one side sees persecution and the other sees justice, there's no common ground, there's no middle, there's just two separate worlds. And family members being dragged into this, that makes it even more personal. That makes it about more than just politics or policy. It makes it about attacking someone's kids. And people, they don't forget that. They don't forgive that. So whether or not Barron ever testifies, the idea that he might, that's enough. That's enough to make Trump supporters even more committed, even more convinced that the system is rigged, even more willing to believe that anything is possible when it comes to taking down Trump. And that's what this whole thing is really about. It's not about Barron Trump specifically. It's about creating a narrative, building a story, making people believe that Trump and his family are under siege from a corrupt system that will stop at nothing to destroy them. And you know what? It's working because here we are talking about it, analyzing it, debating it. Even if the story isn't true, it's already accomplished its goal. Let me give you another angle on this. Think about the broader context. Over the past few years, we've seen multiple Trump family members testify. Ivanka, Don Jr., Eric. Even Melania has been questioned in certain proceedings. So the idea of family testimony isn't new. What's new is the target. Barron is different. He's younger. He wasn't involved in politics. He wasn't involved in business. He was just there. A kid growing up in an unusual situation. And now, the idea that he might be forced into a courtroom, that he might have to answer questions under oath, that he might face jail if he refuses, that hits differently. It's one thing to subpoena executives who work for the company. It's another thing entirely to subpoena a college student who happened to be born into the family. And this is where even people who strongly dislike Trump start to feel uncomfortable because it feels like a line is being crossed, like the legal system is being used as a weapon in a way that goes beyond normal prosecution. Now, is that actually what's happening? We don't know because, again, there's no confirmed subpoena, but the perception is there. And in politics, perception is reality. Look, here's the bottom line. Judge Merchant has been tough on Trump. That's true. He's threatened jail for contempt violations. Also true. But the idea that he specifically threatened Barron Trump with jail, that's unconfirmed. That's based on viral posts and rumors, not on any official court document. But in 2025, that distinction doesn't really matter anymore, because people believe what they want to believe. And once a story is out there, once it's been shared and viewed millions of times, the truth becomes almost irrelevant. The algorithm doesn't care about accuracy. It cares about engagement. And stories about a judge threatening to jail the president's teenage son, that's engagement gold. That's the kind of content that gets shared, commented on, argued about. That's the kind of content that drives traffic and generates revenue for platforms. So even if every major news outlet comes out tomorrow and says this story is false, there's no subpoena, it's all made up, do you think that matters? Do you think people will suddenly change their minds? Of course not, because they've already decided what they believe. The story confirms their worldview, and that's all that matters. So where does this leave us? Honestly, in a pretty scary place. Because if we can't agree on basic facts, if we can't even tell the difference between a confirmed court filing and a viral rumor, then how do we function as a society? How do we have a justice system that anyone trusts? I don't have the answers. I don't think anyone does. What I do know is this. Stories like the Barron Trump jail threat, they're symptoms of a much bigger problem. A problem where truth doesn't matter as much as narrative. Where facts are less important than feelings. Where everyone's so convinced they're right that they can't even consider they might be wrong. And that's the real story here. Not whether Barron testifies, not whether Judge Merchant is biased, but the fact that we've reached a point where a completely unverified rumor can dominate the conversation for days, where millions of people can believe something without any evidence, where the gap between what's real and what's viral has become so blurred that we can't tell the difference anymore. That's what should scare you. That's what should keep you up at night. Because if we're at this point now in October 2025, imagine where we'll be in a year, or 2 years, or 5 years. If this trend continues, if trust keeps eroding, if facts keep mattering less and less, where does it end? I'll tell you where. It ends with nobody believing anything, with every institution completely discredited, with every news story immediately dismissed as fake by one side or the other, with a society where shared reality doesn't exist anymore. And maybe that's the goal. Maybe that's exactly what certain people want. A population so confused, so divided, so unable to agree on basic facts that they can't organize, can't resist, can't even have a coherent conversation about what's happening. So yeah, keep watching, because this isn't over, not by a long shot. More trials are coming, more stories like this are coming, and the divide is only going to get wider. The question is, what are you going to do about it? Are you going to keep believing every viral story that confirms what you already think? Or are you going to start asking questions, demanding evidence, thinking critically? Because that's the only way out of this mess. Not through more outrage, not through more viral posts, but through a commitment to truth. Even when it's uncomfortable, even when it doesn't fit the narrative, stay tuned.